reading for today comes from a letter from Paul to the people in the city of Philippi. And it's on page 982 in the Bibles if you want to follow along, and will also be projected. I entreat Euodia and I entreat Syntyche to agree in the Lord. Yes, and I ask you also, true companion, help these women who have labored side by side with me in the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Please be seated. So, a moment of reality. Last Monday I was meeting with Loa's leadership team, and at the end of each meeting we have what we call around the table, and we tell something, anything. It can be about really anything. It can be about the meeting, it can be about life. And I shared something that, and I hadn't really planned to, but this is what came out, and that is, I was grateful for some people that had helped me prepare for the meeting. In this case, I think it was Patsy and Betty who happened to help me prepare for the meeting. And then I went on to say that I'm grateful to God because I would never have asked for help 5 years ago and back. I would have arrived at the meeting and hustled around and tried to do everything myself and do it all on my own. And that's not saying they wouldn't have been willing 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. But I had this need to do it myself, to take care of it myself, to handle it myself. It was my responsibility. I needed to take care of it. And I don't know if that resonates with any of you, but for me, that is absolutely huge. That's absolutely huge that I felt free to ask for help. And some of the first disciples of Jesus kind of had the same deal, that they didn't want Jesus to help them. They wanted to help Jesus. They wanted to be strong for Jesus. They wanted to do it all. So that when it came time for Jesus to wash their feet, and Jesus starts washing their feet, no, don't do that. I'm good. I'm all right. I can do it. I can handle it. Jesus said, well, this is really important. This is really important. If you don't let me wash your feet, if you don't let me serve you, you don't have any part in me. So, now how does that connect with Paul? Paul, who writes here in this letter, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. And finally, brothers and sisters, whatever true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, think about these things. Paul gave up trying to do it on his own. He gave up trying to handle everything on his own. And that's really huge because as we shared last week, and some of you weren't here, I'll share with you, you need to understand, I think it's important to understand, when Paul writes, rejoice in the Lord always, he's in prison. In fact, he's in prison in Rome, and not only is it just, it could be that he's in a like house arrest kind of a situation, but in that house arrest, he's chained to a Roman soldier, a guard, a Roman guard. He's chained to the Roman guard, like manacles, like leg to leg. And so what that means is he doesn't have any freedom. He doesn't have any freedom to go to bed without that guard right there. He doesn't have any freedom to go to the bathroom without that guard right there. Or when the guard needs to go to the bathroom, guess where Paul is? With the guard. And so in this situation, where Paul's in prison, he's not free to do what he wishes. His body is chained to the body of another man. He can write these words, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. You know, when I first read these words, and for most of my life, I didn't know that Paul was in prison. I thought, well, yeah, he's an apostle. He has life really good. He's in tight with Jesus, and he's preaching the gospel, and life is amazing. And so, of course, you would want to rejoice in the Lord. But no, that is not the case. Paul is chained to another guy 24/7, 7 days a week. And so then when I reread these words and think about these words in the light of Paul's being in prison, it's like they take on a whole new meaning. A whole new meaning. In verse 2, I entreat Euodia and entreat Syntyche to agree in the Lord. So these are two ladies that are arguing with each other. They disagree in the church. And so he's asking them to agree in the Lord, and then he asks for some others. You know, they've helped. They worked alongside him. And so that his mind is not on his chains. His mind is not on his imprisonment. His mind is on the well-being of the church in Philippi. And so ladies, get along. That's essentially what the letter says. Ladies, get along. Ladies, get along in Christ. And then he asks for some others to help them. Yes, I ask you also, true companion, to help these women who have labored side by side with me in the gospel. So he's asking for help for them, and hopefully they'll be open to the help. They won't be like me for most of my life, when I didn't want any help. I wanted to do it on my own. And then he talks about rejoicing in the Lord always. I just want to read this slowly and picture Paul writing this letter chained to a Roman guard. 24/7. Just hear these words with being chained to another human being, chained to a guard. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. So let your reasonableness, all of you, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. This is really strange. That Paul's writing, he's writing, so he's got these chains on it. He said, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. When you pray with thanksgiving, and let your request be made known to God. So a man in chains is writing that. And then verse 7, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The word there, guard, is the Greek word for guard. It's what the Roman soldier was doing with him. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So picture this. So Paul's body, his flesh, was guarded by a Roman guard, a Roman soldier. His body was guarded by a Roman guard 24/7. But As you do these things, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. So the Roman guard is visible and attached. And Paul is saying that when your body is attached to a guard, when your body is chained, when your body is bound, that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. And then he tells us one of the ways of practicing to let God guard our hearts and our minds. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things, what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. Practice these things. Practice these things. It's like learning to ride a bike. You practice it until it becomes second nature and you don't have to think about it anymore. And so God is inviting us to get on the bicycle of giving thanks and thinking about all these kinds of things, whatever's worthwhile, whatever's good, whatever's praiseworthy. Think about that. Think about that. And then look at him as a model, as a role model. Paul, who not only he's in prison now, but he's been shipwrecked 3 times. He's been beaten. He's been in prison before. So whatever you've learned and seen and heard in me, practice these things. So practice it, practice it, practice it, and the God of peace will be with you. Now this is a huge revelation for me, because I've always struggled when, I'm praying for folks, and I pray for healing. And sometimes folks receive healing, and sometimes they don't. Elizabeth and Chase's papa, 90 years old, in the hospital for 8 weeks. His body, there's not any healing there. Okay? And so I read this verse. This was a part of a series of verses, and I was just reading this, and I thought, wow, I've never seen that before, and I've read it probably 100 times through my life. That whatever's happening to my body, that God, the peace of God, can guard my heart and my mind. Regardless of what's happening to my body. And that is so huge. That is so huge to me. And now the key is, am I willing? Am I willing to let the peace of God guard my heart and my mind? Am I willing to let God serve me that way? Am I willing to let God bind himself to my heart and my mind to protect them? Because a guard has to be really close. A guard has to be really close in order to protect. If the guard's far away, there's no protection. The guard has to be right here or right here in order for that protection to be of any use. And am I willing to let God serve me that way? Am I willing to let God guard my heart and my mind?